All right, man. So week one's in the books. Obviously, an important week for a lot of people. They want to see themselves get a win, but it's not the end of the world if you have a loss, right? Like it's the very first week of the year. We're here with the overreactions, bro. And this is the time when everybody's going to look at their lineup and be like, "Man, I hate these players. I got to trade these players. I got to
Yeah.
drop these players." So just chill
Yeah.
on the week one. But obviously, we had real football, and the real football impacts our fantasy decisions at a really big scale. Tyler, was there anything week one wise where you're just like, man, this is something we got to talk about, or something that you noted throughout the week?
I first just kind of piggyback off of what you said. I mean, historically, I don't know what my first week opening weekend record is, but like I seem to lose a ton. And I do pretty well in fantasy football. So it's not the end of the world. And there's been times I know for sure I've looked at my team and said it's awful, and then I went to still win the championship. So you're don't panic. But one thing that I will say, I just think it was a bad opening weekend in general. You had I saw a stat, I don't remember exactly who it was from, but the 49ers and New York Jets needed 300 over 300 passing yards each to not break the record. It was the lowest passing yardage total by quarterbacks since 2013. So it was just a rough weekend, and you go around the league, and like I was trying to think of why. I just think that you have so many new quarterbacks. You have rookies coming in. You also have veterans that are banged up. Like Kirk Cousins looked awful. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, like there's moments, but and like the other problem is some of these guys don't play the preseason. Like, why is Bryce Young not playing the preseason?
Yeah.
And it makes no sense. Like with some of these teams. So it was not a good weekend of football, honestly. Hopefully week 2 is better and there's better games, but honestly, week 1 was kind of disappointing as a whole. I think a lot of teams in my leagues were just lower scoring than average.
Yeah, it was a bad week. And I think the number was 18. 18 quarterbacks, starting quarterbacks threw for under 200 yards. And that's wild.
That's bad.
When you really think about it, like under 200 yards is bad quarterback play. And I think we're getting a mixture of injured quarterbacks returning, players that didn't play in preseason. We also are getting young quarterbacks thrust into
Mhm.
starting roles now that haven't had time to develop. And then we're just getting just shitty quarterback play in
Yeah.
general. Like there's just bad quarterbacks. So to me, man, it's going to hurt our fantasy year at least to start off, and I think it's going to take teams a few weeks to warm up. But when it happens, I think we'll be fine. It's just this ramp up is going to take some time. So don't overreact to week one. But I think what Tyler and I are going to do on this show today is really kind of give some insight to specific scenarios that you might be debating in your head or might have some questions about. And let's start with the running back room in Miami, right? Obviously, there's a game coming up for Thursday. Devon Achane clearly took over the running back one spot. I think that was widely expected. He was the highest drafted running back for the Dolphins. Had a goal line carry as well, so you love to see that. But there's a couple nuances when it comes to the actual play on the field and what actually happens and versus what translates in the box score. Devon Achane obviously got banged up at the end of that game, but Raheem Mostert was injured on the very first play of the game. So obviously, did that affect things? He didn't perform well. He didn't carry the ball well. But we've seen Raheem Mostert have games like that and then completely kill shit the next week. So this running back room was Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson. Jaylen Wright was a surprise inactive for the week. Coming up there on a short week, how are we evaluating this running back room? Because there's a chance that Jaylen Wright plays. There's a chance that Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, one of those guys is banged up. How are you evaluating this running back room for the Dolphins heading into Thursday?
So for me, as of recording this right now, we don't know what the practice report is as of Tuesday. So I mean, if both these guys are practicing, then I'm not too worried about it. But I understand that Jaylen Wright wasn't inactive, but you see that with rookies, like especially early in the season. Last year, I don't want to compare him to Devon Achane, but last year, first game of the season, Devon Achane wasn't inactive, and then the second week, I want to say he only played like 8% of the snaps, and then he went off. So, like we see this with rookies all the time. They take a little bit of time to ramp up. Like everybody thought Caleb Williams was going to be the greatest quarterback. He looked pretty bad week 1. Like these guys take a little bit of time to get going. So for me personally, how I would approach it is I want Jaylen Wright still on my team. If you have him, I would hold him, especially because this week is just not very good for waivers in general. So there's really not many people that I would even drop him for. I would just continue to stash. And if somebody did drop him, then I probably, unless these two guys don't practice, then I would put in a claim for Jaylen Wright because I do think that he has some value, along with Jeff Wilson too. If both these guys don't play, then like honestly, him and Jaylen Wright have value going forward.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to know exactly what to do with these backs, especially if they don't play. But it is a short week, and it wouldn't be surprising to see a Jaylen Wright activated for this game if one of those two obviously is super banged up. But I think the hierarchy of this running back room, it was obvious to me that Devon Achane was the more involved in the passing game, and it looked like more of a pure split when it came to the run game. So the question I have, and I think moving forward, we'll find out hopefully some answers on Thursday. Was Devon Achane's goal line carry a product of him being the absolute starter, or was it a product of Raheem Mostert's inefficiency and injury? So I think that's a part of what I'm evaluating.
You know what my answer is.
Huh?
You know what my answer is.
Well, I know what your answer is, but I think it's worth evaluating, right? Like we can, me and you, we can sit here and guess, and I can talk about how I think Raheem Mostert will be valuable at times. But really, what comes down to it's usage. Usage dictates it all, and we didn't see enough to dictate that one way or the other. We saw one running back carry we saw a red zone carry for Devon Achane. We didn't see anything else out of that, right? So there is still some unknowns with this offense. And I think it's time to what I do personally during the season is like I go through my offseason takes, right? I'm like, these are my takes. But now it's just like this first 4 weeks is all evaluation. And if we get Jaylen Wright thrust into this thing on Thursday night, it's just going to make this thing all convoluted. So I think what I'm looking at is who's the bell cow. Yeah, I think we know Achane is going to touch the ball, but is it like you think Mostert is just complete shit and not part of the offense anymore, or do you think that it was just a bad game for him?
No, I think that like Mostert will definitely be involved, and this is kind of the thing with Devon Achane. Devon Achane is never going to be a bell cow running back. Like it's just not. He's not big enough. What he is, and you saw it this weekend, like 7 catches for 70 something. Like the dude is just. He's insane, especially in the receiving game, where this offense is just early season 2. This offense is just on another level typically. But I still think that Jaylen Wright is like somebody who can be involved in this offense because we already see it. Like I don't know actually what's going on with Devon Achane's injury. Like I went and try to look at X, but there's really nothing kind of going on with him right now. Like I don't know exactly what the injury was, but. Like
it was an ankle late. It was like an ankle late in the game, I want to say.
Yeah, like
an ankle.
So, but we know that Devon Achane is number one. He's a smaller back. Raheem Mostert has been banged up throughout his entire career. He's 32 years old. Jeff Wilson's 20. I want to say he's 28, 29 years old. He's been in the league for a while. He's an older running back. So, we know that this running back room, no matter who gets the opportunity, it's kind of like San Francisco. We saw Jordan Mason look fantastic. It's just a really good system for running back. So I would have Jaylen Wright, no matter if he doesn't even, I would still hold him because who knows what next week brings for waiver wires. This week, it's still not very good, but I think the hierarchy is still a split between Mostert and Achane if they're still, if they're healthy. But Achane, in my opinion, is just going to get those more valuable touches in terms of like receiving work. And honestly, I can still see it split in the red zone between both those guys.
Well, quick update before we get on to the next team. A quick update from Dolphins offensive coordinator Frank Smith was non-committal on whether Mostert and Achane will play Thursday. Both guys are working through some things. And it's thought and believed that Devon Achane has the dreaded high ankle injury. So we will see. Hopefully we get more on that. But Jaylen Wright is a player who, if you have him, like Tyler mentioned, it looks like he's probably, even if both of those guys do play on Thursday on a short week, you got to imagine Jaylen Wright might have some opportunities in the run game. So Jeff Wilson, Jaylen Wright, names to monitor. I would say roster Jaylen Wright just in case some things happen or one of those two happens to be out for an extended period of time. All right, moving on real quick, man. Obviously, that was the Dolphins offense. Let's get into the Bengals, man. Another team that has some high-profile names. You saw T. Higgins miss the first week dealing with the hamstring injury, and who knows how long he's going to be out dealing with the week-to-week type injury. But Jamar Chase did not get the contract, did see the field, though, and put up 6 receptions on only 6 targets. So he got, there was a lot more work and a lot more to be desired. If you had Jamar Chase, you're expecting 15 to 20-point performances on a weekly basis. And we also didn't see Joe Burrow play well. This just his passing game in general did not look like it has in years past. Now, is this due to injury? Joe Burrow is coming off of a major injury that not a lot of people have had. Is he fully healed from that, or is there going to be a downturn in performance? Is Ja'Marr Chase ready to go? He's been holding in, but hasn't been fully working out with the team. So was there a little bit of rust on his end, or was it just a tough matchup against Christian Gonzalez? How are you feeling right now about this Bengals passing attack? Because there's some legitimate concerns about it, especially playing against a Patriots team who everybody thought they would dominate.
Yeah, for me, and also you kind of go back and look at it. Joe Burrow, this offense typically starts off a little bit slower, and then they get hot towards the middle of the season. But you also have to take into consideration too, like I was going through and thinking about this, like, yeah, Joe Burrow, was hurt. He didn't have T. Higgins. T. Higgins didn't play. Also, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon left this offseason. So he's dealing with a new running back room, really new wide receivers, I would even say new tight ends. So like there's just a lot of new people in here. Yes, Ja'Marr Chase was there, but didn't practice all summer long, like you said. So there's just a lot of new pieces here that I think are going to take a little bit of time to get adjusted. Obviously, like everyone, I thought they were going to beat the New England Patriots, but I'm not worrying about this offense right now. I think that as long as T gets back, Ja'Marr Chase gets better acclimated, gets going, I think they'll be good enough to be a pretty good offense. Joe Burrow will still be fine. So I'm not really panicking like some other people are on this offense as a whole. I think better days are to come for him.
The one area I do have some concern, Tyler, is you mentioned it and alluded to it, but I think it had more significance than we thought. Losing Joe Mixon, losing a Tyler Boyd, like those were bigger pieces than I think we acknowledge. And then to not have T. Higgins as well, like if T. Higgins is out for 3 to 4 weeks, this becomes a little bit of a different situation for not just Joe Burrow, but the Cincinnati offense as a whole. You got two guys in the backfield, Zack Moss and Chase Brown, who we'll get to in a minute. But these guys aren't Joe Mixon when it's all said and done. Like they are just not as effective of rushers. And so when you talk about, the receiving position, like Ja'Marr Chase, we know he's going to have games, but I think if you're expecting him to just not have any attention, it needs to be when T. Higgins is on the field until we see the best version of Ja'Marr Chase. And I think, unfortunately, we have no clue when that's going to happen. So I'm not panicking necessarily, but I don't think we're going to get a clear evaluation of this Bengals offense until this team is fully healthy and ready to rock. And the player I'm looking at the most is Joe Burrow. Was this a bad game from Joe Burrow, or are we going to get to see a lot of this throughout the year? So Joe Burrow is the player I think that drives this whole thing for the running backs and for the receivers. Is he able to throw downfield coming off the wrist injury? Has his throwing been effective? Will we see those 300-yard games from him very shortly? So these first 4 weeks, that's kind of what I'm looking at when it comes to this Bengals passing attack, at least. Now, are you starting from scratch now? We know Ja'Marr did not get the contract, right? We know that Joe Burrow didn't look his best against the Pats. And we know that Ja'Marr Chase probably could have got some more looks. Where are you at with Ja'Marr Chase? Because a lot of people are going to be panicking and thinking like, man, do I need to trade this guy? Or is this a buy low guy? Like, where are you at when it comes to Ja'Marr Chase's value?
Yeah, I would say buy low. Like I'm still high on him. Like really outside of maybe Tyreek, AJ Brown, a lot of your top wide receivers weren't great. CD was okay. Like I think he had about the same kind of. Did he have a touchdown? I don't know.
Touchdown, but he was just utilized. But he was same points here, right?
It was like same points as Ja'Marr. So no, I mean I'm not panicking at all. Like with this, if a manager is once again like we said early in the show, it was just a rough week for quarterbacks in general. Obviously, you want to see better things out of the Bengals offense, but I still feel confident that they'll get going. T will be back soon. Ja'Marr will get going. So I have confidence. I'm not fully panicking yet. Now, if we get to like week 4, I mean, sure. But right now I'm not gonna go crazy or anything.
Like you said, a lot of elite receivers just did not play well. And I think if you have anybody that was drafted as a top 25 receiver, give it some time. There's Devontae Adams was drafted early. He didn't have the game that everybody wanted to. Michael Pittman, Drake London,
Marr.
Chris Olave. Like there was really a lot of top receivers. DJ, like a lot of top receivers that just did not perform. So I think to be hard on a Ja'Marr Chase or really anybody after 1 week is is unfair. If you want to tier some players down, do that, but don't completely feel like you need to trade, get rid of, or anybody that you invested a top 5 to 6 round pick in, and definitely don't think you should be dropping these players even in your more shallow leagues. A position, though, Tyler, that we got to talk about, running back. For the Bengals as well, Zach Moss and Chase Brown. And I know you and I have gone back and forth on Zach Moss, Chase Brown, what this looks like. And there was optimism that Chase Brown, he was getting a lot of first-team reps, played a lot in the preseason. To me, it was a clear tier break. I think that Zach Moss looked like the guy. Chase Brown looked like he might have opportunities. What are you doing with Chase Brown? Because a lot of people are going to rush to drop him, especially with other guys, J.K. Dobbins, those players that are emerging. A lot of people are going to rush to drop him off the disappointment. Is this a player you're reacting on? You're holding him, waiting for better days? Where's your thoughts on Chase Brown? Or just the backfield in general? My bad.
Yeah, I mean, I would personally hold him. Now, I guess JK does become intriguing just because I do think of JK, he looked good. I will say that. He did look good. And if he can play like that, then definitely JK should be the number one priority, like add this week. And he's a guy who can be that guy that you add early season and can have, can help you potentially win your league. But this is also another guy we just know he has the worst luck. He just can never stay on the field, unfortunately. And it's only 1 week, but he would be the one guy that I would consider. Other than that, there's just like nobody else worth it. And I would just continue to hold. Maybe if, if we do get word that Raheem Mostert and Achane are out, depending on what the exact injuries are, even a guy like Jaylen Wright, potentially, if those guys are going to be out multiple weeks, becomes intriguing. But like, other than that, like I still would just hold, see how it continues to play out. Yes, it does look like Zach Moss is in the lead, but this offense was not good this past weekend. So maybe they changed things up, like different rotation and stuff. I just think that there's a long way to go for the whole season, that I'm not going to give up on somebody just yet. But obviously it wasn't very encouraging week 1.
It's too early, man. It's too early, especially you're drafting players. And a lot of times there's a word that we attach, right? Like if you drafted Zach Moss, you kind of knew that he was going to get more carries, red zone looks. If you drafted Chase Brown, the only reason you should be disappointed right now is if you thought he was going to be a 15 to 20 carry guy, he was going to be used in the red zone. Like we knew this was the upside play, and the upside is still there. He's a young player on a team that has to go through and find out what they have offensively. So I think panicking on a lot of players right now is the wrong move. And as we alluded to early on, there's not a whole lot on waivers that you just have to go out and make a priority, that league-winning type talent. I just don't see a lot of that on waivers this week. So if you have Chase Brown, what happens if Zach Moss gets banged up and we get Chase Brown in a full role now, and you go and decide to drop him? Or what happens, this team, they lose 2 out of 4, and then Chase Brown has a mega game and becomes a starter. So I think to be so reactionary week 1 is definitely not the move, especially with the split backfield. We might have seen one of the guys take over in the lead, and there's a chance that maybe the secondary guy takes more work over. But to panic and drop players, I think it's the wrong move right now. Hold your water as long as you can, especially through the first 4 weeks. Another intriguing backfield, Tyler, this Jacksonville. This Jacksonville backfield, man. Travis Etienne had a firm grasp on this thing over the last 2 years. And there was word over camp, we want to get him less reps. We want to get Tank Bigsby more involved, take a little bit off of Travis Etienne's hand. Both Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby had 12 carries each. A little shocking if you drafted Travis Etienne. And also, you're now watching Tank Bigsby to see what this thing looks like. What's your evaluation on this Jacksonville backfield? Because it got a lot interesting here in their week 1 matchup against Miami.
Yeah, so there's 2 things that I'm looking at. Well, not 2 things, but so the first one is Travis Etienne, obviously, at the end of last year was not very efficient. And that was kind of the worry for a lot of people drafting him this year, is he going to be that kind of player? Well, week 1, he was not efficient. Now, when you actually look at the snaps and everything, Travis Etienne still played 70% of the snaps, and he ran nearly every single route. So that's encouraging. Now, what I will say, though, and kind of how I viewed this is Tank was hot. Tank was the better back. They just stuck with him. They kept feeding him. Why not when, Travis Etienne isn't playing that well? Now, I do think it becomes a problem going forward if Travis Etienne continues to not be efficient. Like if that's just what we're going to see and Tank continues to be efficient, then yeah, it's probably going to get closer to 50-50 split. But if next week Tank goes out there, first 4 carries, 0 yards, Travis Etienne, first 4 carries, 25 yards, then yeah, I think it's just going to go back to Travis Etienne and he's going to be the guy. But like, sure, if Tank, I probably wouldn't put in a waiver claim for Tank. I wouldn't really want to waste my waiver, especially with probably a couple weeks here. There's going to be a really big ad, but he's a guy that I would, if he ends up clearing, sure, I would go ahead and pick him up at the end of my roster. But I'm not going to fully like panic on this position yet. But I do think it will get to that point if a couple weeks Tank is seeing more work and he's the efficient one, and Travis isn't the efficient one for sure.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of, we just talked about the Bengals, and it's like you have Tank Bigsby in the backfield. It's a second half thing, right? But the good thing is he was free in drafts or undrafted. So you're not forced to roster a guy like this, and he's not involved in the passing game. So it's a little bit of a different player. Like, he got the carries, which you want to see, but it wasn't like he got he's the red zone back. It wasn't like he's the featured in third downs, or passing situations. So Tank Bigsby is a guy that maybe he gets more reps, but until we know that this is a 50-50 split or a 55-45 split, this is more of a wait and see type of player. I do like Tank Bigsby, though, and I think that he's going to play a role. The one thing that I'm interested in, Tyler, is the second half. We've seen Travis Etienne kind of break down over the second half of the last 2 years. If Tank Bigsby does get additional opportunities in that backfield. Before we go to the next backfield, though, we also got to talk receiving core for this Jacksonville team. Brian Thomas is here, and it looks like he might even be the highest guy in this wide receiver hierarchy. Christian Kirk with 1 catch. We know Gabe Davis is always super inconsistent. But, I mean, throughout the preseason, even now through training camp, all we're hearing is how this connection with Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas is real. And we saw it on the field in this game in an incredible throw that he made there in the back of the end zone. But it looks like Brian Thomas is the guy. Do you feel like that's the perception that you have as well? Are we panicking too much on Christian Kirk? Where are you at with the receivers?
Yeah, I mean, what was the final passing stats for Lawrence? Was it
I think he was under 200 too, or like just
like it was just not. It wasn't very good, and I don't even think he had that many attempts. I want to say, 21 attempts, 162 yards. Like, what? That's so.
It's
I
weird,
don't understand.
Ain't it?
Yeah, because then you look at the other side. Tua Tagovailoa, 37 attempts, 338 yards. So it's really hard. So I did like Brian Thomas. Coming into the season, I thought that he was really intriguing. I liked him more than Ladd. Like, him and Ladd were going right next to each other just because Brian Thomas offers like that explosiveness and a red zone threat that I don't think Ladd quite is, although Ladd even scored, but he's not the same type of player that Brian Thomas could potentially be.
Right.
So I like Brian Thomas heading into the season. I do think that there's potential he ends up being this team's number 1, but like, still, like, week 1, yes, it was very, very encouraging, especially when you look at like what Marv did. So it's encouraging, but like 21 pass attempts, it's a small sample size. I still think Christian Kirk will be okay. Like, I think Christian Kirk will rebound. He had 4 targets. I think he'll be okay. It was just like we keep saying, a weird week, but it was just not a very good passing week at all for this passing offense. But I do think Brian Thomas has a lot of potential going forward. Absolutely.
So, if you're in a draft right now, you just start your league. Who are you taking if you're on the clock right now? You have 10 seconds to make a pick. Who are you taking, Christian Kirk or Brian Thomas?
I would take Brian Thomas.
Yeah, I think
I don't like Christian Kirk that much. Like,
it's the upside too, right?
Yeah, like Christian Kirk, I feel
upside.
like is safe, sure, but I would take Brian Thomas.
I'm good off Christian Kirk, man. Like, there's a world where he goes out and has 9 catches for 100 yards next week, but for the most part, I think this is starting to look like they spent a first round pick on a guy and they're looking to get a specific result out of him.
And it was nice that he played a lot too. So
he did, man. So. And then, all right, so moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders, a lot of concerns about Devontae Adams. I don't think there should be any concerns about him. We talked about how bad it was for receivers. And shout out to Brock Bowers having a very strong game, 8 targets, looked the part more than I thought he would. But the conversation, Tyler, has got to be about the backfield. Zamir White was the first back drafted in this backfield, had a strong finish to the year last year, came in and had the first crack at opportunities, but it was another running back who we kind of faded, who was also drafted high last year. Alexander Mattison, we kind of threw him to the gutter, and I mean, he played well. It's nothing to write home about, but he played well for this Raiders backfield. Do you have any concerns about Zamir White? Do you believe in Alexander Mattison? Where are you at when it comes to this Raiders backfield?
Well, it's always funny during the preseason because I would always say this year's Alexander Mattison is Zamir White, and they're on the same team. I mean, I am concerned about first off, I was not interested. He was one of my fades. I'm not interested in Zamir White. And the reason why is because he's never been a receiving back. Dating back to college, 2% college target share, which is horrible, absolutely horrible. Clearly, it was Alexander Mattison who is this team's receiving back. I want to say he played over 60-70% of the snaps, route participation. So in terms of just the routes, he outsnaps Zamir White. Now, you can say because they're playing from behind, he was the guy that was obviously going to play because of the game script, but still, it's just I don't number one, how many games are the Raiders truly going to be ahead in this year? If I don't think this is a very good football team. So if they're going to be playing in these games that they're potentially going to be down quite often, which back would you prefer? I mean, I would prefer Alexander Mattison, and honestly, it's not even I really prefer either one of these backs. I don't like either one, but if there was one that I would prefer, it would be Alexander Mattison just because of that receiving upside that he does possess. And I think that there's a world where he could push Zamir White for more just carries in this backfield too if he performs. And he looked kind of decent this past weekend. I'm not saying Zamir White didn't, but he wasn't overly impressive. So
yeah,
it's just a backfield that I'm not super excited about, but why not, Alexander Mattison for free?
There's value in the back. I mean, in any backfield where there's a starter or a potential starter, there's value there. So it's it is identifying who is the guy. And, this is going to be one of those ugly splits until probably mid-season. We're going to see, I think, Alexander Mattison had a better day, but I think there will be a day when Zamir White looks like the better back by a large margin. And we're going to be questioning this decision a lot. If I had Zamir White, I wouldn't be overly panicking. I think I would just tear him down. You drafted him as a running back 2 potentially for your team. He's probably more RB3-ish until we figure out, is this a 15 carry guy or not? He had 2 targets in the passing game, 13 attempts. So he led the team in attempts, obviously. But Antonio Pierce came out and said they're going to ride the hot hand. So that obviously lets me know Mattison earned himself more reps and he saw the field more. You talked about it as well. The negative game script did not help them out at all. And Mattison was on the field for 60% of the snaps. Zamir is going to have trouble seeing the field if they're not winning football games. So I think there will be better days ahead.
How many games do you think they win?
I mean, it's probably a 6 to 8 win football team.
So it's probably going to see a decent amount of, and I will say too, I don't think he even suited up, but Dylan Laube just becomes a guy who I think later in the season, if this team isn't very good, they could see, what they got in some of these guys. So Dylan Laube, big talk in training camp later in the season, a guy that, put that at the back of your mind here a little bit and watch how this season progresses.
I will say this. The Raiders did only put up 10 points, and we talked about egregious quarterback play this week, and Minshew did not look great, but he did throw for the yardage.
He did throw. I know. I don't know
for
how.
The yardage, just not the touchdowns. And so we got to see this team get in the red zone. Obviously, they're able to move the ball downfield, but, at least Minshew showed that he's capable and can move the ball downfield. So, for me, I want to see a little bit more. I want to see something that shows Zamir White can be productive in that backfield. The team they played against, the Los Angeles Chargers, wow, right? The offensive line looked amazing, and Justin Herbert did not. He looked regular with this receiving core, but this backfield, I was really high on Gus Edwards getting first opportunity. He was the nominal starter, but it was J.K. Dobbins in the second half who erupted and looked the part, man. He looked quick coming off the Achilles. I think that was the biggest concern for most people. It was, what does he look like coming off of this injury? And can he replicate what he looked like in the past for the Ravens? This is a guy we were taking as a top 20 back in fantasy before he got hurt. Now, I don't know the staying power of J.K. Dobbins, what that looks like. And who knows if Gus Edwards can look better than he did in week 1. But it's clear and obvious that J.K. Dobbins is a priority pickup for leagues that are probably a little bit more shallow. But also, if you have J.K. Dobbins, this now becomes a flex-worthy player. Where are you at on this backfield? Because J.K. did have 10 carries. Gus led in carries. J.K. just looked the part. You could tell when you were watching.
Yeah, I mean, definitely looked apart. And I know people will say he had that one run, but even if you take out that one run, he's still, I want to say, had 9 carries for 70-some yards, which is still really good. Better than Gus. Now, obviously, we keep saying it week 1, but it is impressive because I basically wrote him off coming off this Achilles. Like we don't see anybody coming off the Achilles injury. So it is, and I'm happy for him because the dude has had the worst luck, really, of anybody I can think of. It's just been horrible for him. So, I mean, I hope it continues, and I really do hope that he ends up balling out. But once again, it is just 1 week. If he is available on the waivers, though, he would be my priority target, my number 1 target, just because if he does end up looking like this and is able to break off big runs and look like the player that we thought he could have been, then absolutely, like, this is a guy that I would want to roster going forward. And I think of like everybody on the waiver wire this week, he offers the highest upside of anybody that's available. So I don't want to just, crown him as the RB1 of this offense just yet, but it was definitely very, very exciting to see him perform so well coming off the injury and really in the backfield that was kind of in limbo this offseason. We weren't quite sure how it's going to play out. So it looks good.
Yeah, we do have to dial in it's one game, right? Like, because there's games where players play well, there's games where players play bad. And obviously 11 carries to Gus Edwards. It means both of these guys reviewed equally coming into the year. JK definitely took more advantage of it, but it is a wait-and-see approach, right? Harbaugh might say, hey, Gus is playing well this game, we get him in there. JK's playing well this game, let's get him in there. So I don't want to, like, if I'm spending fab this week, I'm not blowing the budget on J.K. Dobbins, even though he's the guy outside of maybe Jordan Mason that has the most potential here in the short term, I would say. Like, he is the player that offers, if he sticks, he's a weekly RB3, maybe RB2 for your team, depending on your league size. So I agree with you there. Are you wasting a number 1 waiver priority on him? And are you spending more than 20% of your fab budget on him?
Probably, yeah. I would, just because of the potential. And like, there's been times in the past where I haven't done this and I've hated myself for it because you end up missing on these guys. So I personally would, just because the potential. Now, maybe he doesn't reach that, and I'm okay with that because I don't think that there's really anybody else. You could say Jordan Mason, and I'm sure we'll talk about him in a little bit. But I don't think that there's really anybody else this week. I'm sure next week maybe there will be somebody else, but then you'll have guys waste their fab and on other guys and waste their priorities. So I would, if I had how much fab I would do, honestly, I'd probably do about 30%. I would do about 30%. And the reason being is just because I really do believe if this is going, I know it's only week 1, but if this is going to be the guy, and we know what the potential is with JK, it's just the injuries have always derailed him. Yeah, he's coming off the Achilles, but I mean, this was also really, really good week 1. If he ends up seeing kind of that potential, I do think that there's a lot of upside. And also because he is this team's preferred receiving back. Like, he was out there on the receiving down. So if he ends up overtaking the rushing role, he already has the receiving role unlocked and a potential bell cow. I'm not saying that's going to happen after week 1, but there's always that potential that I'm okay with spending that fab.
I think it's valid, though. The injury concerns are valid too. And if you have some concerns about him getting re-injured, like, there's a real possibility that he could get. I don't wish this on him, especially for a guy that's had to work through so much in his career, but he's an injury-prone player, and this just it's something to note, especially when budget is so much more valuable as the season goes on. So I hear you, and it's a player that could be a regular starter for you if things pan out. But there is a lot to there. This is a risky player. Do not forget,
and kind of player. Absolutely, and kind of what you talked about earlier too. This offensive line looks good. They look good. They look really good. So this is going to be a team that's going to be a very run-heavy team. So if he does, not saying, obviously if he does, it could be a player that really could be a weekly staple for your team.
Going from one of the best offensive lines in the league to looking like one of the worst offensive lines in the league, the Los Angeles Rams. My goodness.
They're banged up.
Dealing with a lot of injuries right now, and that offense just in general looked decent against the Lions, but we know over the next couple of weeks with starting guard going on IR, Puka Nacua going on IR, this Rams offense is going to look a little bit different. Quick hitter before we get into the backfield really quickly, where obviously this is a one-man backfield. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the receivers? With Puka Nacua going out, who you got as the wide receiver too? Obviously Cooper Kupp showed he's back in a major way, and we're getting the old Cooper Kupp. But who's the number 2 on his team behind, besides Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson? We've seen them both get looks. Who do you like?
I guess Tyler Johnson, just because he produced, but like these are 2 guys that have been in the league for a while. Like one of them is going to do something just because Sean McVay his system's so good. But I guess Tyler Johnson, I don't feel great about like either one of them though.
I feel really good about Demarcus Robinson. And we saw him last year to end the season out. He had like 4 or 5 straight double-digit games in PPR leagues. And Stafford trusts him. You know what I mean? That's one of the things. You see the field with Stafford. And if he trusts you, he will throw you the football. And we know Stafford is a guy that he has to throw the football. That's just the nature of who he is. So he's going to throw for 250 a game. It can't all go to Cooper Kupp. And the secondary target in this game seems to be Demarcus Robinson that's earned the trust. Once he got the starting role last year, because they play a lot of 3 receiver sets, once Demarcus Robinson got the role, he was on the field and producing. The thing I worry about with Tyler Johnson is he has to earn the role now. Is it Ty Johnson or Tyler? I think it's Tyler.
I think it's Tyler, yeah.
Ty Johnson's the running back, right? So
yeah,
Tyler Johnson, he had that 60-yard play, but I'm concerned that he's going to be more of a pop guy. And then you also have Jordan, Whitmore? Jordan Whitmore?
The rookie.
Yeah, rookie. Is it Whittington or Whitmore? I got to get that down.
I want to say Whittington.
It's Whittington. Jordan Whittington, who was, used on the red zone, obviously didn't get the touchdown, but he might even get a little bit more work in this offense. So I think Demarcus Robinson, just being the nominal starter, the guy that's been in this offense, is the guy that I'd be looking for. And I think over the next 4 weeks, could return like wide receiver 3 value in PPR leagues. I'm actually kind of high on Demarcus Robinson going in. Quick before we get to the running backs, what do you think about Cooper Kupp?
I mean, 21 targets is disgusting. The biggest problem, though, I have kind of is like, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit with CMC too, but like these teams are bullshit. This is not right. Like how they handle the injuries with this kind of stuff. There was no way Puka Nacua was not dealing with more than what they're letting on. Like there's no way. Yeah. And it's not like in CMC too, like the way that these teams, like there's too much money on the line now for the NFL to not like penalize these teams for the injury reports and how serious these players are. Like you have gambling sites that you're promoting all the time. So like there has to be something done with this, because Puka Nacua was clearly not ready for the start of the season, and there was something more going on than what this team was letting on. So,
but he played though, like he played and he was playing decent in the first.
But he just went down with just fell on his own, and then all of a sudden it's PCL and his knees flaring up when it was just supposed to be
through injuries though. You know what I'm saying? Like players are going to play through injuries. Like, so how severe was it? That's up to Puka.
I think it was more severe than what this team is letting on. Like there's no way that this just happened right then and right there. Like there was definitely more that led up to this kind of stuff, and like CMC too. Like there's way more that leads up to this stuff than these guys just, oh no, he's going to be out this week. Like, no, this is bullshit. There's way too much on the line for this kind of stuff anymore, and it happens every single year.
I feel like with the Puka one, he played. Maybe he was a little banged up, but he at least got on the field. With CMC, that was one of the more crazy things that I've seen heading into a Monday night game. The star running back of the NFL says he's going to play. You get the coaching staff has him practice throughout the week, and then he's just inactive. To me, that made, and then we get Jordan Mason, who may have been speaking a little out of pocket, may have, just been speaking in the moment. I'm not going to put any blame on the kid. I don't know what his clear thoughts are. They asked him when he knew he was going to be starting. He said, maybe kind of Friday night.
Yeah.
So if you believe him, if you believe him, you believe Shanahan, who you believe?
Of him, because then his interview coming out, like, he was crying.
Yeah, he got in trouble.
Like, he got chewed up, yeah, by the PR team and by Shanahan. Like, once again, it's bullshit. This kind of stuff cannot happen. Like, especially CMCs. That was horrible. That was horrible because people are already placing their bets. And like, the biggest thing are the bets, because this is real money that people are spending, and you're promoting sports books on commercials. Your NFL Red Zone
All tied together.
It's all tied together. So there's no reason that these teams should not legitimately be reporting injuries and ruling players out when they know that they're going to be out. It's
both
horrible.
Reported. They, like Puka. We knew Puka was hurt. We knew he was week to week and he practiced. Christian McCaffrey was. We knew it was a week to week injury with Christian McCaffrey. They were hopeful he'd be ready by the season. The one thing I'll say is, what if Jordan Mason just said it the wrong way? Right, coming out of a game, incredible game. He's on cloud nine, and they're like, "Hey, when did you know you're going to be starting?" And in his head, the team was like, maybe Kyle Shanahan was like, "Yo, just be ready for a bigger workload." And then on Friday, he was mentally preparing himself. When she asked him the question, he didn't process it the right way and said, I kind of like, I go with my gut. I'm just saying. And now this whole thing is turned topsy-turvy. What if that's the scenario? What if we're placing too much blame on the coaches or on Jordan Mason for saying it wrong? Like, what if it genuinely was just like a media thing, right? They're asking these players, you go and play a whole game. You know how it is, Tyler. You see the field. You're tired half the time. Just want to be done with the game. So I'm like, when it comes to Jordan Mason, I get like he messed up, but maybe the team, I don't know. I don't have the same feeling towards that. I will want to see an investigation, though. I want to see if Jordan Mason did have, because then that changes things. If he knew on Friday and Kyle Shanahan just flat out lied, that's not gaming. That is clearly going against the rules. And I'm a Niner fan. That's not what I want to hear. No,
absolutely. No, I agree with that 100%. I do think there should be an investigation with that, because with it being Monday night, I just think it's shitty all around.
I'm not gonna lie to you. So I don't check my messages very often, right? On Instagram, on Twitter, whatever. I had somebody message me on Twitter. I'm not gonna say the name that it is, but it's a guy that doesn't follow me, a guy that has one follower, and he messaged me and he goes like this. He says, I know my brother knows a guy who knows a guy who got some inside info on CMC, and apparently he's even more hurt than he's being let on. This is Friday night. Hopefully I'm not giving out no sources here, but this dude messaged me, seriously, says, apparently he's even more hurt than is being let on. And this is the same dude who said the same thing about Todd Gurley either last year on the Rams or on the Falcons season. Is Mitchell or Mason the guy to pick up? So hopefully I didn't out whoever that was, but that was just a random note that was sent to me. And I'm like, oh, like there must have been, and that was what, Friday night. So there must have been some kind of inclination like, yo, there's word getting out that he's not going to play. And they did not say nothing. Because to be honest, I took that. I was like, you're asking me about Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason. I'm kind of taking that with a grain of salt. But like to name, that was Friday night. And what did Jordan Mason say? He said Friday night. Yeah. Maybe that was Jordan Mason texting me. You never know.
And maybe.
Any other week one topics you want to get to, Tyler? Before we head into week two, like there was a lot that happened. We could literally do a 3-hour show on what happened, but was there anything just top of mind you want to get to?
Well, what do you think about Marv? Are you panicking about Marv?
No, but I was already in that boat though. Young players, same thing with Malik Neighbors. Like I think if you had one of these,
Malik was not bad.
Caleb Williams, but Daniel Jones is. Daniel
Jones bad. Yeah.
Until there's a quarterback change, Malik Neighbors is going to be so tough to trade. That was a plus matchup for him, and couldn't take advantage of it because Daniel Jones is literally throwing it to.
It's a plus matchup this week too, though. They get Washington.
Yeah,
and if Daniel Jones can't do anything, oh my gosh, I said this, like he shouldn't be a starting quarterback. Like
no,
the Washington Commanders are the worst pass defense in the NFL. Have been. If you can't do anything against them, I mean, come on, man. Like, what are we doing here?
A lot of people drafted Marv, though. I know Malik Neighbors was drafted like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. Marv was drafted as like a top 10 to 12 pick in some leagues, a top 10 locket receiver. I was kind of fading him, so I already figured like inconsistent wide receiver 2. I think better days are ahead. Are you panicking on Marv? Are you changing, adjusting his rankings? Or you still think
no?
He's a top 10 guy?
No, I'm not panicking, but like, I mean, I can't break down film. Like, I'm no guy like that. But when I was watching him though, like, I don't know, he just didn't look overly impressive when he was running. I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
maybe it's just because he's a rookie, but it was like I thought this guy was a generational player. And like you can tell sometimes when they are generational players, like they just pop. You know what I mean? Like they pop off the screen. When I was watching his routes, like watching him run, I was just like, doesn't
yeah.
look like this guy that's
He'll be
supposed to
better.
be better than Jamar Chase.
He'll be better. He'll be better.
I'm sure he'll be better, but it's just like,
Yo, let's spend a little bit of time, a little bit more time on this. I know we talked about Christian McCaffrey, but we got some breaking news coming in. So let's kind of sideline this. Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Shanahan came out, said Christian McCaffrey has Achilles tendonitis, which is a 6 to 8 week injury according
oh
to
my
Google.
gosh.
Achilles tendonitis. So this now comes out after the game. Holy shit. Because now this changes a lot. Like Jordan Mason becomes an automatic priority
Yes.
pickup. But now we are going to there's going to be some kind of investigation into this Niners thing now. Christian McCaffrey expected to be out, potentially put on IR, it sounds like, with an Achilles injury, because this was always listed as a calf injury. That's the one thing. This was listed as a calf until yesterday when he was listed out with a calf Achilles injury. So with an older player like Christian McCaffrey, who everybody said you had to take with the number 1 pick. So if that was you, there's a reason why you don't always have to go with the grain.
Hey, me and
How are
you
you
were
feeling
both on
about
that
this right now?
boat, right?
You
You're
said what?
Bijan, I was Brees.
Bijan and Brees. I think those are 2 great picks now. When you look back in hindsight,
Yes.
both of us are feeling good about our number 1 picks right now.
Yes.
But
I
Christian
mean, this
McCaffrey,
is
man,
massive. And this is what I'm saying. I mean, this is some bullshit because this messes up. And obviously, I don't know. Like you said, there has to be an investigation. Like, because if they knew about this and they weren't reporting it correctly, like this is just massive implications to everything. Like this is something that sports books, if anybody put any futures down, needs to avoid like those futures. Like this is what I'm saying. Like the NFL it's not fucking 1990 anymore. Like this is 2024 where there's massive amount of money being made off of this game. So there needs to be better reporting like with this kind of stuff early season because we don't know what the seriousness of this is. And like Jordan Mason, obviously he looked fantastic. I mean, really that offensive line
that's the
just
pickup of the week now. That's
it's
definitely the pickup of the
stupid.
week. If this
Yeah,
is long term,
100%.
it's the pickup of the week.
Like if he's available, like I mean, you're talking 8 weeks of the season potentially that you get Jordan Mason for. Like that's a guy who can easily carry you through those 8 weeks. So becomes a top priority. I do think a guy that would be intriguing to just stash is like Isaac Arendo. Like I wouldn't put in a claim for him, but I would just add him to the end of my bench because who knows, like maybe Jordan Mason goes down next week and then he gets an opportunity. So he would just be somebody that like after waivers clear, if you have an extra bench spot, I would pick him up. But I mean, and it's also 1 week. Like who knows? Like maybe next week Jordan Mason doesn't look that good. Although I'm sure like that offense just it's too damn good not to look good. So
Hopefully it's not a 6 to 8 week thing. Hopefully he's already been dealing with this maybe, and
yeah,
hopefully it
maybe.
continues. You know what I mean? Like hopefully we're at the back end of this. A note by Kyle Shanahan. He said Kyle Shanahan on his Achilles issue, which is tendonitis, it's flared up and gone away at different times. Shanahan said if it had been a playoff game, he thinks CMC would have played. One of the injury doctors that I think gives out pretty good information, Dr. Jesse Morris on Twitter, called this an acute tendonitis, which is an inflammation of the tendon, likely dealing with the acute phase now, and it will calm down because this plus the calf issue is going to likely wax and wane as the season progresses. Hopefully there are no tears of the Achilles tendon and just the tendonitis. Big translation for us on the stream here and for you guys watching. CMC should be back sooner than later, but this likely isn't the last time we hear of it. So a player you drafted early, I would be looking at Jordan Mason as a back-end and mid-tier RB2, I think, for the time being, until we get Christian McCaffrey back and at full strength. But a concern, if you had concerns about Christian McCaffrey's injury, they were valid, and obviously this is not good. He pulled himself out of practice on Friday, so Obviously, this could have been a setback. This could have just been something that flared. A lot to be discussed here, and I'm sure as we get more information about this, we'll be able to get it out to you. But anything else you want to cover before we get out of here, Tyler?
Well, Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert both didn't practice today either.
So, man, both in practice. And there's a short week Thursday, so bro, a lot going on with running backs just in general, bro. Like I said, I'm sure we could be on here for the next 2-3 hours talking about this, but Devon Achane and obviously Raheem Mostert not practicing. Jaylen Wright needs to be a priority pickup heading into Tuesday's waiver wire pickup. So you got, or Wednesday, whatever day you want to call it. But today at midnight, we got waiver wire pickups, 3 p.m. on the East. So, dude, a lot here. Do not panic. It was a theme. But if you got some of these players, I guess it's all right to panic, man. For Justin and Tyler, we are going to see you guys on the next one. Hopefully, we might have to do another one here soon, bro. Like just to get some more info out because there's still a lot to cover for week 1. But until the next one, we'll see you guys later. Peace out.
Peace.